Welcome to Narcissist Apocalypse, everyone. I am Brandon Chadwick, and today we will be doing a debrief for Jennifer's survivor story. We will be doing key takeaways and the things that we want for her going forward. And there is a content warning for this episode as we do discuss physical violence, threats against children, femicide, addiction, and suicide in this episode. And for those of you who have not listened to Jennifer's story yet, here is a summary of her story. So Jennifer grew up watching her father terrorize her mother. Her mother's name was Martha, in a very small town where everyone seemed to know everyone. Everyone knew what was happening, yet nobody stopped anything that was going on. And Jennifer's mother had fallen in love with her abuser as a teenager, believing she understood him, even though he was troubled and had anger issues. And once they married, he controlled Jennifer's mother's clothing, prevented her from working, and subjected her to tons of criticism and physical violence. And the family lived in constant poverty, moving all the time, while Jennifer learned to read her father's moods and hide her younger siblings whenever rage was coming out within her dad and physical abuse was happening to her mom. In one terrifying incident, the abuser, her dad, threw a pot of scalding grits over Jennifer's mother and Jennifer's little sister. Police did arrest him, but he returned almost immediately after that happened. And eventually, after a particularly terrible domestic violence incident, Jennifer's mother found a job, saved money, bought a car, and escaped with her children for good. However, this created a bigger danger. And despite Jennifer's father's history of violence, the court required Jennifer and her siblings to spend weekends with him. And during one of those visits, he forced them to burn their mother's belongings. And then one morning, Jennifer's dad loaded the children, her and her siblings, into this car, and they were supposed to be going to a water park, but they drove in the opposite direction. And sensing something was really wrong, Jennifer struck her dad repeatedly with a hairbrush until he turned around, and she later learned that he had planned to take the children into the woods and kill them to punish Jennifer's mother for leaving. And after this incident, when they arrived back at his parents' home, the abuser, Jennifer's dad, held her 6-year-old brother at gunpoint for hours. And the police arrested him again, and he was released from jail approximately 1 week later. And then the stalking began, and there's a lot of stalking that was going on here. And then one day he did show up at the school where Jennifer's mother worked, and he claimed that he wanted to bring her some clothes, only to kill her on his arrival. And all this happened, and Jennifer was just 10 years old. And Jennifer and her siblings were adopted by her maternal grandparents, but no one really knew the psychological damage she was carrying that had already happened, the trauma that she had been through. And she was told that caring for her younger brother and sister were now her responsibility. And Jennifer stepped into this parental role and really shut down all of her grief. And she appeared successful at school while becoming really detached from herself at the exact same time. And as an adult, the trauma did resurface itself in the form of an eating disorder, alcohol dependency, and even a suicide attempt. And eventually, over time, Jennifer did enter a safe marriage and really started to get a deeper understanding of the trauma that she had been through, and she was able to make sense of everything that had happened to her. And that is where Jennifer was now when she told her story on our show. And that is a summary of Jennifer's story. And now we're going to get into the key takeaways. So the first takeaway from Jennifer's story is what I call the rescue fantasy in seeing someone's potential. And Jennifer's mother met her father when they were both young. They shared an interest in writing, and Jennifer's mother saw qualities in him that other people might have overlooked. She believed he was intelligent, and he wrote poetry, and he came from a home where he had also experienced abuse as well. And to Jennifer's mother, he was someone who was just misunderstood. And she believed she could understand him in a way that other people could not. And she saw this potential in him for all these things that she was seeing and what he had been through. And she believed that she could bring the best out of him. And that belief can really create this big attachment, and it did for her at the beginning. And for people that are going through something like this, you can really start seeing yourself as the person who is recognizing someone else's potential, and you focus on who this person can become. You know, you start to see, like, if I love this person enough, or if they receive the right kind of support, they will reach their potential of who they can be. And yes, this is a very admirable trait. But if you are concentrating on potential and not the abuse, this can keep you stuck. You know, maybe one day they will change or reach that potential. Who knows? But right now, they are abusive, and that is a fact. Their potential is not a fact. And there is no shame in being in a relationship where you want to rescue someone or you see the potential in what is going on. We just want to point these things out here right now. If this is resonating with you, abuse is still going on, and that is a fact. And we just want you to see these things, and we are hoping that you can see these things a little bit more clearly so you can get out quicker. But potential is not a fact. Abuse is a fact. And who knows if they will ever change. And maybe one day they will. Who knows? But right now, facts are facts. And the fact is, abuse is happening. And the next key takeaway is what I call the secondary isolation from the community and the system. So Jennifer grew up in a small town where people knew one another and neighbors could hear what was happening inside their home. In one instance, a neighbor called the police after Jennifer's father threw scalding grits on Jennifer's mother and Jennifer's sister. The police came and arrested him, yet he returned almost immediately. And afterward, those neighbors began distancing themselves from the family. Jennifer was no longer allowed to play with their children. So all of a sudden, right here, they are actually more isolated than they were before. So instead of receiving support from these neighbors, they started to experience avoidance. And this is creating further isolation. And with law enforcement here, the abuser kept getting released from jail with no punishments. And the police continued treating the situation as though they needed something even worse to happen than before so they could actually intervene. And this is an abuser with an extensive history of violence that was undeniable, and they still didn't take it as seriously as they should. They asked the police to do something, but they really got nothing in return. In some sort of way, it was like, this is your business. This is how the town run. You know, this is what's going on. You take care of your own business here. So they would be going for help here, but they weren't getting any help. It was kind of like the help didn't exist. I mean, at this point, who else are they going to go to for help? You're in a small town. You're isolated as is, and now you're getting even further isolation. So when you continuously get responses like these, this can make the victims feel more alone and more trapped. And this is really here a big societal failure to victims of domestic violence. And for those of you going through something like this, my heart goes out to all of you. And the next takeaway is the danger when an abuser starts to lose control. So Jennifer's mother did many of the things people often suggest when you're trying to leave an abusive relationship. She got a job, she saved money, she bought a car, she then took her children to her parents' home and filed for divorce. And for a lot of people, they think this is safety. But for many people, for many victims, this is when the danger can really begin in this post-separation aspect of things. Because when an abuser realizes they are losing control or have lost control, they might start doing anything to try to get that control back. And that can take place within the relationship as well. So with Jennifer's mother, she really started building this life away from her dad. And her dad started to really realize how much control that he was losing. And once Jennifer's mother stayed away and the divorce was moving forward, that is when the abuser's behavior really became more dangerous, when this control was completely lost. He bought a shotgun. He then took the children on a drive that Jennifer later learned was supposed to end with her death and her siblings' death. His intention here was to punish Jennifer's mother through the people she loved most. And even after Jennifer's brother was held at gunpoint by her dad, he was released by police and he began appearing wherever the family went. He was stalking them and just creating this giant atmosphere of fear around everything that they were doing. And they could just feel his presence wherever they went. And eventually Jennifer's father took Jennifer's mother's life at her place of work. These are just things that should be taken seriously. Not all abusers will go to these lengths, but when someone is all about control and they don't want to lose control or they have lost control, we really don't know what can happen, especially if they've already been extremely violent. So you may see an abuser really trying to use any tactic to keep you from being independent, especially if it's late stage and nothing that they once used in their bag of tactics is working anymore. They might start flailing about. I hear this in so many different people's stories. And then one day they might start doing something that's scary to keep control on you, but that doesn't work. That doesn't work anymore. And then the next week they might start being really nice, and maybe that works or that doesn't work. They're just going to start cycling through as many control ideas that they have in their mind. And the last thing on that list, the ultimate control for people who are like this, is actual murder. So what I guess I'm trying to say here is just to be aware that these things are possible. I don't want to scare you. We're just trying to be safe, and I'm saying that where safety is not always possible, but for friends or families or coworkers, be aware. Listen to the tactics that are happening. Take all of this seriously. Leaving is not always being able to be safe, but friends and families should be aware of everything that is going on. And I think in the book, No Visible Bruises, it takes on average just over a year of separating the abuser from the family to get that mind frame of control out of their system when it comes to an abuser like this. So keep that in mind. But here, I just want everyone to be safe, to do everything as safe as possible, and to try and do your best to get anyone to listen to you about the abuser, because it's important, and to have friends and family and your workplace, everyone to be on board to try to keep you as safe as possible. And the next takeaway that we have is hidden childhood trauma and the resilience role. And Jennifer was constantly monitoring her father's mood. She learned to study his face so she could recognize when something was changing. She knew that being too loud or drawing attention could lead to repercussions for her mom. And when her father's behavior escalated, Jennifer was grabbing her siblings and tried to get them somewhere safer. And Jennifer, within her body, she was actually responding to all this chaos that was going on. And she struggled to sleep when she was younger and was experiencing severe headaches. And she was living with this fear that someone she loved could be hurt, and her nervous system at a very young age was destroyed and was just on alert all the time. And at the same time, she was being the strong one that held it all together for others, but things inside her were manifesting in a way that she couldn't explain. A lot of adults probably couldn't explain as well, but it's even more confusing for a 10-year-old at this time. And then after Jennifer's mother died, a neighbor told Jennifer that she was now the oldest and that taking care of her brother and sister was her job now. She's now being given this role as being this resilient one. It's kind of what she's being told here. And Jennifer is taking those words seriously, and she's comforting her sister at night, and she worries about her brother with anxiety, and she's not taking care of herself. She's small. how does she even know how to take care of herself? But the adults here, the grandparents, they're doing the best that they can. They came from the Depression era, but it's still, early 1980s, and her needs aren't being met in the best way from the people who are older in her life. And from the outside, Jennifer is appearing to do well. She made good grades. She won awards. Adults saw a child who was functioning and just concluded that she was good and she's just resilient. But what they could not see was that she had really become disconnected from her emotions and her memories. And Jennifer describes feeling as though her mind and her body were just operating separately, and entire parts of her life for her became very difficult to remember. And that dissociation going on was helping her survive. And again, it made her look resilient. But the trauma here is remaining unprocessed inside of her, and it is growing. And eventually the resiliency becomes dependency and control, controlling her disordered eating, dependency on alcohol use. People didn't meet a child's needs when young because she was taught to be resilient and looked like she didn't need help. And this had now all caught up to her. And the inability to talk and process for others to meet her needs eventually hit this breaking point here. And Jennifer did attempt to take her own life. So all these things were manifesting, even though she looked resilient from the outside. So this is for the adults out there. Sometimes a child who looks like they are the strongest child has learned that there is no room for them to fall apart. They hold everything together because they believe other people need them to. So please check in on these children. Meet their needs. They need more than you think, and you're saving a child's life by doing so. Just give them the permission to talk about what happened to them without making them feel responsible for protecting other people when they start giving their truths. Meet their needs. Let them be a kid. Let them fall apart. Be there for them. Listen to them and meet those needs. And for the children out there who had gone through this, there's no shame in the addictions and all of the disorders that were going on. You didn't have your needs met when you were younger and you were told to keep things together, and it's okay to not have things together, and it's okay that you had these addictions and these disorders. You didn't get what you needed when you were younger and you're just coping as best you could. So those were our key takeaways. And now the things that I want for Jennifer going forward. I want Jennifer just to know that protecting everyone is no longer her job. And every child who grew up around abuse, I want them to hear that message as well. Jennifer spent years watching her father's moods, trying to keep her mother safe, taking responsibility for siblings. And that role was there to help her survive. I just want Jennifer to have relationships where she receives support and no longer has to support everyone else around her. And for anyone listening who learned to hold your family together, there's a big difference between caring about people and feeling responsible for protecting people in every single way. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to ask for help and let someone else take care of you. And then the other thing that I want for Jennifer is just to grieve the childhood that was taken from her. Jennifer lost her mom. She also lost the chance to grow up without chaos going on around her. She was not allowed the freedom to be a child who could depend on adults to handle all the frightening things that were going on. She was given that role. So I want her just to grieve the childhood that she lost, all the things that you should have received, the safety that you really needed, the comfort that you were missing, and just the years you were just trying to survive. You just should have been allowed to have been a kid and grow. And yes, you can honor that strength and resilience that helped you survive, but I just want you, Jennifer, and everyone else who had to deal with this, I just want you all to be able to just grieve what you lost at the same time as well. And I want all of these things for everyone out there. And I hope you found this episode enlightening and educational and validating. And if you want to be a guest like Jennifer was on our Survivor Story episodes, please do go to our website at narcissistapocalypse.com. Click on the guest form button, fill out the form, and we will go from there. We also have a support group at our website with Zoom meetings every Wednesday nights, Thursday afternoons, and Saturday nights. And we have a newsletter at our website where you get a free workbook for every new Survivor Story that comes out, all at narcissistapocalypse.com. And that is it for today's debrief episode. So for myself and Jennifer, we hope you have a good night.